150 years ago, there existed 127 recognized intelligent species inhabiting the galaxy. These species varied from the slender and elegant to the hefty and sluggish, as well as the many-legged and intimidating. A diverse array of beautiful and distinctive races contributed to galactic society, each offering their own unique cultures and perspectives to the universe. Presently, however, only 56 of these species remain, with many at critically endangered levels. Among these 56, I wish to discuss the one that has become the most feared of all: humans. Humans were the last to integrate into the galaxy prior to the onset of the calamity, and they concealed much about themselves and their past. This tendency was not unusual, as many species tended to withdraw somewhat when faced with the vastness of the galaxy, often acknowledging their realization of how diminutive their own species truly is. We respected their privacy and refrained from delving too deeply into their history, especially since they had already established a remarkable stellar empire in a relatively isolated and sparsely populated region of the galaxy. Their populace abandoned their jobs, homes, and families in large numbers to explore the stars of other nations. Within less than a decade, it became commonplace to encounter humans on every planet, their remarkable adaptability allowing them to coexist with nearly anyone. The broader galaxy came to appreciate these peculiar bipeds, whether they were mining on Celis 4, managing enterprises on Prim, or exploring the vibrant caves of Galoria. Humans rapidly evolved into a significant minority across the galaxy, naturally inclined to be explorers, diplomats, and traders, and they quickly forged strong alliances in every sector. Even militaristic races such as the Drum or Liligar found themselves impressed by these soft, pink beings. Combat abilities and their respective governments swiftly acquired human representatives as they triumphed over the previous holders in duels. They were omnipresent, engaged in various activities, yet remained reticent about their own history. They eagerly explored the histories of other civilizations, but seldom shared details about their own. When they did, they would recite the same phrases, focusing solely on the last few centuries, discussing the emergence of the current human federation, which was formed from a fragmented species comprising numerous smaller groups. Eventually, we ceased our inquiries. 48 years after their arrival, a threat arose from a region of the galaxy that had long been considered impenetrable due to its dense nebula and peculiar electromagnetic interference. The Groks emerged. The galaxy had enjoyed peace for over a millennium, and even the more militaristic species had largely allowed their military forces to diminish as they began to envision a galaxy devoid of war. The galaxy reacted swiftly, but our community had not engaged in any conflict for nearly 180 years, let alone war. Technological advancements had progressed, and governments prioritized other matters over retrofitting militaries that had only been called upon to address minor pirate issues. We were taken by surprise, and by the time we established a genuine blockade, nearly 2 years had passed since the emergence, with a full 30% of the galactic arm now under the rapidly expanding GRS empire. The humans were ubiquitous, occupying every role: combat medics, admirals, ship engineers, you name it, and the humans were present. However, as the decades passed, the fighting intensified, and the most resilient economies began to reveal their vulnerabilities. The various empires faced significant challenges in maintaining an effective defense after nearly 50 years of conflict. A human diplomat, Charlize Matoran, presented herself before the Galactic Council, requesting that humans assume control of the combat operations. We had already lost nearly half of the galaxy, and ancient empires had crumbled and been absorbed by neighboring factions in their attempts to prevent rogue states from exacerbating the situation. It was indeed true that many humans occupied leadership roles in the war effort, even within the military ranks of non-human empires. However, we continued to voice our objections. The humans had suffered losses nearly equal to those of all other combatants combined, leading us to believe that they could not possibly form an effective fighting force. While it was acknowledged that they possessed combat skills and maintained a functioning economy due to their geographical distance from the conflict, they had never engaged in a war on a galactic scale. We debated this matter for weeks, with Charlie's remaining steadfast in her beliefs, which she claimed were supported by the highest authorities. Opinions within the council were polarized. Some viewed the humans as inexperienced opportunists seeking to exploit a crisis for power, while others perceived them as a peaceful trading group aspiring to make a positive impact. Ultimately, in a moment of frustration, she declared that she was no longer making a request but issuing a demand. She insisted that leadership be removed from the Galactic Council and transferred to humanity, a demand that was supported by the humans in leadership roles. They asserted that their people were well-versed in warfare and would comply with any orders given. To use a human expression, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Other generals and admirals aligned themselves with their human counterparts, compelling the council to take action. Within just a week, a human fleet successfully reclaimed a sector that we had struggled to regain for months. They emerged from FTL and began launching nuclear weapons and light-speed missiles at the Grok fleets with a recklessness that approached insanity. The enemy stood no chance. They were torn to shreds in a barrage of fire and blood. In a single week, they expended as much firepower as we would typically use in a month. Yet, they accomplished something we had not witnessed in years: tangible results. However, they did not halt their advance. They pressed deeper into enemy territory. Although they paid dearly for each system they captured, the Groks suffered even greater losses. 3 months later, we officially recognized them as the leaders of the combined galactic fleets. A human admiral entered the military headquarters of a galactic armada and declared that the galaxy would belong to them within a decade. We laughed at this proclamation, yet they fulfilled their promise. Human leadership inspired an increasing number of humans to join the battle, confident that with their own people in command, victory was merely a matter of time. By this stage, the Groks had slaughtered trillions, and every human who enlisted had lost colleagues, friends, or family. Even those few who had not suffered personal losses were motivated to assist those who had given them so much, or simply to exact revenge on the Groks. Throughout the conflict, humans were omnipresent. Vast medical fleets attended to soldiers injured in ground combat, while armadas of human ships pursued the enemy through space without restraint. We had witnessed every aspect of this engagement. The most commendable action ever undertaken by humanity was occurring simultaneously as the greatest intellects of our species engaged in a profound debate. After a prolonged period of conflict lasting half a century, they ultimately arrived at a consensus. It took them a month to reclaim territories that had long been under the control of the Groks, a year to shift the momentum of the war, and by the 4th year, we had the Groks in retreat. However, the methods employed to achieve this were chilling. They involved biological monstrosities, the byproducts of deranged scientific experiments, unleashed upon worlds to devastate military installations. Where these horrors failed, entire colonies were emptied of their violent inhabitants, who were then deployed to exploit the chaos and dismantle Grok forces. A viral bombardment unleashed horrific plagues, leaving entire planets in torment as their bodies disintegrated from within, transforming them into grotesque masses of quivering flesh, or systematically tearing their organs apart. Nanite swarms methodically stripped enemy fleets of their hulls, deliberately spacing the occupants as they converted the precious metal into more of their kind, eventually evolving into planet-sized abominations capable of consuming entire star systems within weeks. When nanites, viral bombardments, or mutated horrors proved ineffective, the humans resorted to incinerating entire worlds in nuclear flames, turning manufacturing hubs and economic centers into everlasting monuments of fire, ensuring that the Groks would no longer maintain dominion over those territories. When the inevitable backlash arose, Admiral Jonas S.M. addressed the galactic news, stating simply, "Do you wish to see the GRS defeated, or do you desire to succumb to their weaponry?" By the 6th year, the galaxy had witnessed an abundance of atrocities and had turned back. Attempting to mend our shattered and fragmented nations would require centuries, and our economies had been pushed to the brink. With the Grok's defeat inevitable, we transformed our swords into plowshares and offered prayers to our human saviors. However, with each passing day, the humans devised new and creative methods to terrify the universe with their monstrous concepts. Accelerating particles to light speed and colliding them with planets to obliterate them in mere seconds became a prevalent strategy. Fleets of drone swarms, resembling locusts, dismantled ships that attempted to escape the atmospheres of devastated worlds. Those worlds that depended on regular food supplies were simply encased in a shield and left to their fate as the war fleets advanced relentlessly. Their inhabitants were abandoned to starve, regress, or resort to cannibalism, which became the new norm. Yet the most harrowing events unfolded in the 7th year as nanite swarms expanded to encompass stars. All the various viruses the humans possessed had long been re-engineered for maximum effectiveness. The humans had also assimilated new warfare techniques from other empires, and even from the Grow themselves, deploying them with enthusiasm. Real Fox stood as the radiant beacon of the Linen Church. It had been captured in the first decade of conflict and represented a significant victory for the Grok. An entire system of 20 planets, all meticulously terraformed into the most exquisite garden worlds in the galaxy, was a masterpiece of terrestrial engineering and artistic design. Its loss had been catastrophic for the Church's morale. The humans hastened a payload towards the real sun of Fox, resulting in a supernova within hours, which subsequently collapsed into a black hole. This black hole, eager and voracious, consumed everything within the system. By the week's end, this action led to the condemnation of the humans by the Galactic Council. While many had previously excused their atrocities, the humans' newfound capability to collapse stars was deemed a step too far. The Council's condemnation sparked outrage across various worlds, with calls for the humans' removal from the War Council. In response, the human leadership issued a singular message: this is war. In war, there exists only victory or death, and they were determined to achieve victory. Accompanying this message was a comprehensive history of humanity, revealing a legacy spanning millennia of conflict. Time and again, war defined the human experience. Whether it was nations clashing, or citizens rising against their governments, or insurgents advocating for a cause, war was a constant, never ceasing. Even before departing their blue jewel, Earth, they had nearly obliterated it on 5 distinct occasions in their relentless pursuit of conflict. By the goddess! Even after their departure, wars persisted for decades. Earth versus Mars, inner systems versus frontier worlds, and the conflict with Alpha Centauri. It was a cycle that never concluded. Over the 800 years from their initial colonization of another stellar body to the discovery of the galactic community, there were no fewer than 963 wars involving one or more human factions, with some conflicts occurring concurrently with others. During the Civil War against a government which was simultaneously engaged in repelling an invasion, they exhibited an inability to restrain themselves, and we unleashed that upon the galaxy. We initiated a genocidal campaign to counter another genocidal force. The humans upheld their commitment, and the GRS were driven back to their isolated region of the galaxy. Subsequently, their systems were devastated in one of the most horrific genocides the galaxy has ever witnessed or will ever witness, and we remained silent. What could we possibly say? When the humans wage war, it is an all-or-nothing affair. They took action to ensure that their new allies retained the galaxy they referred to as home, and in the process, they dismantled it. Then, they reverted to their previous behaviors. Their horrors confined within vaults, sealed, or simply deactivated and cast into suns or black holes. Their military largely disbanded its war regiments, and those who enlisted received generous pensions, either retiring or returning to their former occupations. However, the galaxy would never forget the potential horrors that humanity could unleash if provoked. While they never issued threats, they did not need to, for among all the atrocities we had observed, one remained paramount: the humans' capacity for war and the consequences we would face if we ever turned our weapons against them.